The oxygen disappeared instantly. 1 second I could breathe. The next second it was gone again, like someone had flipped a switch inside my lungs. I gasped, hard, but before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. My hands clawed at the air, instinctively searching for the mask that had just been there. "Ma'am, please," the paramedic started, but my mom cut him off. "Leave her," she said sharply. "She's fine." The room froze. You have to understand how strange that moment was. I was sitting on the floor, pale, shaking, barely able to inhale. The oxygen monitor clipped to my finger was already beeping faster. Anyone looking at me could tell something was wrong. But my mom just stood there like nothing serious was happening. "She does this," Dana continued, waving her hand dismissively. "It's attention-seeking. If you give her oxygen, she'll just keep pretending." Pretending? The paramedics exchanged a quick glance, the kind professionals give each other when something doesn't add up. Miguel reached for the mask again. "I'd still like to put this back on," he said calmly, but my mom stepped between us. "No," she said firmly, and just like that the situation changed. Not loud, not dramatic, just tense. I sat there gasping for air while 2 trained medical professionals hesitated because the person blocking them was my own mother. Have you ever watched adults argue about your health while you're the one struggling to breathe? It's a strange kind of helplessness. The oxygen monitor beeped again. Faster. Paramedic Samantha Cho, Miguel's partner, glanced at the screen and her eyebrows tightened. "Her oxygen is dropping," she said quietly. Miguel looked back at my mom. "Ma'am, we need to—" But before he could finish, heavy footsteps sounded on the porch outside. More responders were arriving. A tall man in a dark Navy fire captain's uniform stepped into the doorway. Captain Robert Hayes, 47 years old, 25 years in emergency response. He walked in calmly, scanning the room in seconds. He saw the stretcher. He saw the paramedics. Then he saw me sitting on the floor, gasping for air. And finally, he looked at my mom standing between me and the oxygen mask. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he stepped forward. He looked directly at my face, and something about what he saw made his expression change instantly. His voice became firm, controlled. "Ma'am," he pointed gently to the side of the room. "Step aside." But the next thing he noticed wasn't the oxygen mask, and when he realized what it was, the entire situation took a turn nobody in that house was prepared for. This wasn't the first time my mom said I was faking. That's probably the strangest part of the entire story. By the time the paramedics showed up that afternoon, the breathing episodes had already been happening for months, but according to my mom, none of them were real. I'm Lily Carter, 15, sophomore at Mesa Ridge High School. I loved track practice, sketching in my notebook during lunch and hanging out with my 2 best friends after school, until the breathing started. The first time it happened was during gym class about 6 months earlier. We were running warm-up laps around the track when suddenly my chest tightened. Not tired, not winded. Tight, like someone had wrapped a band around my lungs and started pulling. I stopped running. My coach, Erin Wallace, noticed right away. "Lily, you okay?" she asked. I tried to answer, but the words came out in broken gasps. The school nurse checked my pulse and immediately reached for the phone to call my mom. But when Dana Carter arrived, she barely looked worried. "She just gets anxious," my mom told them. "She does this when she wants attention." The nurse suggested an ambulance. My mom refused, and that was the end of it. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. A few weeks later, it happened again, this time at a grocery store. I remember standing in the cereal aisle when the same crushing pressure returned. My vision blurred, my fingers tingled, and I had to grab the shopping cart just to stay upright. "Mom," I gasped, "I can't breathe." She barely looked up from her phone. "Take slow breaths," she said. "You're hyperventilating again." But I wasn't breathing fast. That was the problem. I couldn't breathe at all. A woman nearby asked if we needed help. My mom laughed it off and told her I was being dramatic. Then she made me walk outside until the feeling passed. No doctor, no hospital, just silence. So when the paramedics arrived months later and my mom said the same thing again, "She's fine. She just does this." Part of me wasn't even surprised. But the paramedics were. Back in the living room, Miguel Alvarez clipped a monitor onto my finger again. The small screen flickered for a moment before showing the numbers. His expression changed. Samantha leaned over his shoulder. "What is it?" she asked. Miguel lowered his voice. "Her oxygen levels are dropping." The room suddenly felt smaller. Samantha reached for the oxygen mask again, but my mom immediately stepped forward. "No," she snapped. "You're feeding into it." Miguel hesitated. It's a strange reality of emergency work. Parents usually have the final say when it comes to their kids. But something about the situation wasn't sitting right. Because while my mom insisted I was exaggerating, the monitor kept beeping faster. Then Captain Robert Hayes crouched beside me. Unlike the others, he didn't argue. He didn't look at my mom. He looked directly at me. And in a calm voice, he asked a simple question. "How long has this been happening, Lily?" I tried to answer. I really did. But before the words could come out, my vision tilted sideways. The room spun. And suddenly, my body collapsed forward. The monitor screamed with a sharp alarm, and that's when the captain noticed something no one else had seen yet. When the fire captain looked at me, he wasn't looking at my breathing. That realization came later. At the time, everything felt blurry and distant. The room spun as I struggled to stay conscious, the sharp alarm from the oxygen monitor echoing somewhere above me. But Captain Robert Hayes was focused on something very specific. My neck. While the paramedics moved quickly, Miguel reaching for the oxygen mask again, Samantha preparing the stretcher, the captain leaned closer and tilted his head slightly, studying the skin just below my jaw. At first glance, there didn't seem to be anything unusual. No bruises, no obvious injuries. But then he noticed it. Thin red lines. Faint. Or irritated. Almost like marks left by pressure against the skin. Not fingerprints, not scratches. Something else. "Hold on a second," he said quietly. The room slowed. Miguel paused with the oxygen mask halfway to my face. Captain Hayes gently lifted a strand of my hair away from my neck. The lines were clearer now. They ran in a small circle around my throat, like something had been pressing there. He glanced up. "Lily," he said calmly, "did something press against your neck today?" Before I could answer, my mom spoke immediately. "No," Dana said sharply. "She's just anxious." It happened so fast it almost felt rehearsed. Captain Hayes looked at her, then back at me. He asked the question again. "Lily, think carefully. Did anything tighten around your neck today?" My brain struggled through the fog, the dizziness, the panic. Then a memory surfaced. Earlier that afternoon, I had been sitting in my bedroom, finishing math homework at my desk. The ceiling fan hummed quietly above me, and sunlight was coming through the blinds. And I had been wearing something new. A necklace. My mom had given it to me about a week earlier. A silver chain with a small oval pendant. I remembered touching it earlier that day because it felt strange. Heavier than normal jewelry. Almost warm. And now that I thought about it, right before the breathing started, I remembered something else. The pendant pressing against my throat. Tight. My fingers lifted weakly toward my neck. The captain followed the movement and gently pulled the necklace forward so he could see it clearly. A small silver pendant. Nothing unusual at first glance. But when he turned it slightly in the light, his eyes narrowed. "Where did this come from?" he asked. My mom answered again. "I bought it," she said. Just 3 words. But there was a tiny pause before she said them. A hesitation so brief most people probably wouldn't notice. But Captain Hayes did, and suddenly the air in the room felt different. Miguel quickly placed the oxygen mask back on my face, while Samantha checked the monitor again. The numbers were still dropping. This time, Captain Hayes stepped between my mom and the paramedics. Not aggressive, just firm. Dana's voice rose with irritation. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." But the captain didn't move. He carefully unclipped the necklace from around my neck, turning it over in his hand, studying the back of the pendant. Then he said something that made both paramedics lean closer. "There's electronics inside this." For a second, nobody spoke. Jewelry doesn't usually have electronics. The captain pressed gently along the edge of the pendant. A tiny seam became visible, like a hidden compartment. He looked back at the paramedics. "We're transporting her," he said calmly. Then he handed the necklace to Samantha. "And that's coming with us." Because in that moment, he had a strong feeling the reason I couldn't breathe wasn't panic, and it wasn't anxiety. It was hanging right there in his hand. But the real truth about that necklace wouldn't be uncovered until we reached the hospital. And when doctors finally opened it, everything about the situation would become even more disturbing. By the time we reached the hospital, the chaos had quieted down, but the tension hadn't. The ambulance ride felt like floating in and out of a strange dream. The oxygen mask stayed firmly on my face now, cool air flowing steadily into my lungs. With every breath, the crushing weight in my chest slowly eased. And that alone was raising questions. If this had really been anxiety, why did oxygen fix it so quickly? The emergency department doors burst open as the paramedics rolled the stretcher inside. Nurses moved aside quickly while a doctor stepped forward to meet them. Dr. Karen Patel, 45 years old, emergency physician. "What do we have?" she asked. 15-year-old female, Miguel said. Breathing distress. Oxygen saturation dropped significantly before transport. Dr. Patel looked down at me, then at the monitor. The numbers were already climbing. "Better with oxygen?" she asked. "Yes," Samantha said. Dr. Patel nodded slowly. That detail mattered, because panic attacks usually don't behave like that, but the captain wasn't focused on the breathing anymore. He was focused on the necklace. He held the small silver pendant out to the doctor. "We found this around her neck," Captain Hayes said. "I think it's relevant." Dr. Patel turned it over in her hand. At first glance, it looked like normal jewelry, smooth silver, oval-shaped, decorative. Then she noticed the seam. "Do you mind if we open this?" she asked. No one objected. She used a small tool from the tray and gently pressed along the edge of the pendant. Click. The back panel popped open. Inside was something nobody expected to see inside a necklace: tiny circuitry, a battery, and a micro-vibration motor. Dr. Patel frowned. "This isn't jewelry," she said. The room grew quiet. Captain Hayes folded his arms. "What is it?" Dr. Patel examined it more closely. "Looks like a consumer GPS tracker," she said. "They're often built into watches or tags for pets or luggage." She paused. "But I've never seen one built into a necklace like this." Suddenly, the earlier question returned. Why would a 15-year-old be wearing a hidden tracking device? The captain turned slowly toward Dana Carter, who had followed the ambulance to the hospital. "Ma'am," he asked calmly, "do you know anything about this device?" Dana hesitated, only for a moment, but the pause was enough. "I bought it online," she finally said. "It's a tracker." "For what reason?" the captain asked. Dana crossed her arms. "To keep an eye on her. Lily, her daughter." The explanation landed heavily in the room, but the doctor wasn't finished examining the device yet, because something about it didn't make sense. Dr. Patel pointed to the small motor inside the pendant. "This part vibrates," she said. "Usually these trackers vibrate when someone activates them from the phone app." Captain Hayes leaned closer. "What does the vibration do?" Dr. Patel picked up the necklace cord, and then she saw the design. The cord threaded through a small mechanism inside the pendant. When the motor activated, the internal piece rotated slightly, tightening the cord around the neck. The realization spread slowly across the room. Dr. Patel looked up. "This could restrict the airway," she said. "Not enough to strangle someone instantly, but enough to make breathing extremely difficult, especially if it activated repeatedly." Suddenly, the past 6 months made sense. The gym class episode, the grocery store, every unexplained breathing attack. They might not have been random at all. But then Dr. Patel noticed something else. She held up the open pendant. "There's one more detail," she said. "The vibration motor didn't activate randomly. It only turned on when someone pressed a command in the companion phone app, meaning those moments when the necklace tightened were triggered by someone. And according to the device's connection log, only one phone had ever been paired with it, Dana Carter's." But the explanation she gave next would leave the entire room stunned. The room went completely silent after the doctor said it. Only one phone connected to the necklace, Dana Carter's. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The steady beep of the hospital monitor filled the space while Dr. Patel held the opened pendant between her fingers. Captain Hayes turned slowly toward my mom. His voice stayed calm, but there was a new seriousness in it now. "Ma'am," he said, "did you activate this device?" My mom didn't answer right away. She stared at the small tracker sitting on the metal tray like she was seeing it for the first time. Her arms, which had been crossed defensively all afternoon, slowly dropped to her sides. Yes," she finally said. The word barely came out. The paramedics exchanged a quick look. Captain Hayes asked the next question carefully. "How many times?" Dana hesitated again. "I don't know," she said quietly. "A lot." Dr. Patel leaned forward slightly. "What did you think the vibration feature did?" And that's when the explanation came out. Dana believed the vibration was just a notification signal, a way to make the tracker ping its location. The instructions online had mentioned a remote alert button, and she assumed it was harmless. So whenever she checked the app, whenever she thought Lily might be ignoring her messages, whenever she suspected Lily was being dramatic again, she pressed it. Over and over and over. But what Dana didn't realize was that every time she triggered that alert, the tiny motor inside the pendant activated, and the cord tightened around my neck.